Hey, it's Rod Yates. Welcome to another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey and the lessons they've learned. And my special guest today is legendary singer-songwriter Tex Perkins. Tex is one of the finest and fiercest frontmen ever to stalk a stage, and the very definition of an artist who follows his instincts wherever they take him. He first made his name in the 80s when he formed the primal rock band The Beasts of Bourbon, but he had his greatest commercial success with an act called The Cruel Sea, who for a while in the early to mid-90s were one of Australia's biggest bands. Since then he's released many great albums with multiple projects, the latest being the Fat Rubber Band. This interview's a lot of fun and contains stories of rioting crowds, police run-ins, and generally disgraceful behaviour. When Tex turned up to the studio, he'd just come from a meeting with his Cruel Sea bandmate Ken Gormley, at which they finally brought to a close a saga that had gone on for decades.
It's hard to know where to start this story.
Okay.
Because it involves a span of 27 years.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so last December, it was mid to late December, I started getting messages and emails from people and from all directions saying, hey, an aria for The Cruel Sea is up on Facebook Marketplace and somebody's wants to sell it.
Yeah.
So I'll just give you some background. Maybe it's time to give some background. When The Cruel Sea was a band I was in the 80s and 90s, and into the 21st century for a while, but I probably still am in that band. But we won a bunch of ARIA awards. That's the Australian Grammys, I guess.
Yeah.
And
this is for The Honeymoon Is Over, right?
This is for the Honeymoon Is Over album, and we got all the major ones. Song of the Year, blah blah blah. Well, there was 5 to the band and also the producer. So anyway. These things are incredibly heavy and incredibly long and pointy. They're probably the most dangerous object I have personally handled. And that includes, like knives and guns. I mean, but anyway, we were pretty high on life that night. And I was literally carrying around 2 ARIA awards. And I think I gave one to someone so that I could hold a drink.
Yeah.
And at some point in revelry, we noticed that the cheap sort of ply wall, I stabbed it into the wall and it stayed there, and we thought that was hilarious. This is at an after party at one of the record companies. There's a series of parties that get thrown, and I think this was at the Rue Art after party.
Right.
Anyway. Funny gag, stabbed this ARIA award into the wall. Actually, we took some pictures of it, and the night was going on. Anyway, I'm sitting there across the room talking to Kev Carmody, and I look up and I notice that my girlfriend is being attacked. I see this guy she's got long blonde hair, and she's being tugged around by her hair.
Really?
And there's this complete out of control, little out of control scene. And I just, I went and dealt with it in the most sort of passionate manner. As one does when you are confronted with a loved one being, physically attacked.
That's it. I'm
a bit like that. Anyway, that happened. Chaos ensued. I have many, funny memories of that night. And I'm giving it to this guy, but also people are sort of trying to stop me because I'm really
You're
letting loose.
Yeah.
And one of the faces that I remember peering before me, just stop, Tex, was Molly Meldrum. And by then my hands were covered in blood, and I remember pushing Molly away, and the last thing I see is Molly disappearing with this huge red handprint on this white shirt, beautiful white silk shirt. Anyway, we leave. It's like, okay, let's go. And I escorted Christina out. And we left, and we left the ARIA there.
Right in the wall.
Anyway. there were various other arias, and they fell into the right hands. But anyway, a few days or later, somebody rang up Triple J radio station and put forward some ransom demands. We have the Cruel Seas Song of the Year award. And they're claiming that they stole it. Whereas really they just noticed it.
Plucked it out of the wall.
Oh dear. Anyway, it was kind of a joke thing because one of the demands was Michael Bolton's work permit must be terminated immediately. Joke sort of things. And
sure.
Another requirement was that we reinstate James Cruikshank back into the band.
Right.
He'd been in a car accident a few weeks before, and that's why he wasn't there. So I know there was an assumption that he wasn't in the band anymore. Anyway, their ransom demands were met, were already met. But anyway, for some reason, we forgot about the whole issue.
Yeah.
Like we literally, I don't know, we just went on with life, and no one followed through on the thing. So literally 27 years went by, and this ARIA award appears for sale
on eBay,
on Facebook Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace, right?
Starting price $1. Found in a bin.
Really?
Found in a bin. Includes newspaper clipping outlining the details of the ransom demands, because that made the paper, the local paper back then. So it's got a 27-year-old bent aria and the newspaper clipping that explains the sort of the extortion attempt at the time. But anyway, meanwhile, sort of little known to us, like people were all outraged. So like what's coming at me from the way the information's being presented to me is like, oh, this is an outrage. Oh,
right.
You've got to get it back, and and I'm just thinking it's hilarious, and like I'm standing in wonder of like, what? Wow, this is. And all the details were so funny, $1 in the bin, found the bin.
What's it up to now?
But yeah, okay, yeah, that's where it gets. This is where it goes up a gear. This guy is, because he's put it out there on Facebook, the outrage that people are expressing to me, they're expressing to him too. And they're going, you scumbag, you filth, how dare you, blah, blah, give it back to the rightful owners, you piece of, So he's getting hammered by the inevitable Facebook lynch mob. The outrage, the people of outrage. Nothing better than a bit of Facebook outrage to get people together. Anyway, it was getting really scary, and we was trying to, dampen the situation, and sort of. Meanwhile, that's going on. Kenny from the Cruel Sea, the bass player, has managed to contact. I'll give him a name. I'll call him Ernie, because that's his name. Anyhow, he contacts Ernie, who is copping a blitzkrieg of Facebook abuse, and go, fucking, I didn't fucking know any of this fucking shit. I didn't fucking steal it. And Kenny calms him down and tells him the whole story, and then they kind of have a laugh about it, and then and Ernie agrees to give it back for a slab of VB. I have the photos. Anyway, it took a little while because I think they both got COVID over the Christmas New Year period, and so. But the meeting has taken place, and the aria.
You've got it back.
We got it back, and I just went over and saw Ken then, and we again went through more really funny details, which only really Kenny can describe. But yes, that's my day so far. That's what I've come back. I should bring it in here and plonk it down there.
You've got it in the car.
I've got it in the car. It's right out there.
Is it good, Nick?
It's so hilarious. It's got a bent top because they're incredibly sharp and heavy.
Yeah.
But the bent top, it's got a significant bent, to the point. But also, they put the date of when it was awarded to us, and they've bothered with the day, and they've misspelt Wednesday.
That's the icing on the cake, surely.
It's just endless. It's just endless. But significantly, where Ernie has found this is behind the building of Sony Music.
Right.
And Ernie goes there because he often finds stuff that they've chucked out, things that actually, like, they'll have a promotional poster of, I don't know, Queen or somebody, and it'll be signed and shit. Like, because it's come from the, and it's kind of worth.
Yeah.
People pay, proper money for that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so he's just included. I think he must access this bin. This bin pays off pretty regularly.
Because it was funny because your kind of attitude to that success back then and winning 5 ARIAs, you're kind of cynical of it, weren't you? You were a little bit suspicious of.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. There's a few factors there. We all come from the sort of punk, scene where kind of any success is kind of a bit of a sellout. Right. Even if it happens sort of when you're doing what you love to do, leaving the scene and going up the ladder has always seen a bit of, looked at with a bit of a, those wankers. Look at them wankers, So we've had that in, that's sort of central to our kind of ethos, DNA, of and the surrounding kind of attitude towards success and things like that, and especially awards. I mean, but also that was very early in that was like the 8th ARIA Awards.
Okay.
In the first few years, it was very industry, and nobody really even knew about it. It was all just Farnham and his mates, and Kadinsky and all that mob,
sure.
patting everybody, each other on the back. Also, we didn't really take it on board, how seriously other people took it. So I guess that's why we were a little bit loose with the actual object of it. I mean,
right.
I think that's why we were able to let it go for 27 years. Like, the object doesn't really mean, it's the fact that you were honoured and and you enough people thought, you gave your thumbs up at a certain point.
Yeah,
it's not about the actual obtaining, loving and cherishing the object of the award.
Yeah,
the fact that you won the award is kind of the point, really, isn't it?
Right, right.
So it's in the record books. So that's. Having said that, we were not hell-bent on success, but we'd been playing together. And like, I met that band as an instrumental band.
Yeah.
I walked into a gig that my friend was mixing and just fell in love with this band.
You were doing the lights for
them, exactly. My friend was the mixer, and there was a empty lighting desk right next to, so I just started doing the lights, even before I'd met the band. So I'm getting into it, and I came back each week just to do the lights, and this went on for a year.
Yeah,
because also at the time I was in a lot of sort of avant-garde kind of bands and noise music, and sort of actual sort of songwriting wasn't what I was doing.
Right. Was it with Thug?
Things like Thug.
Yep.
Yeah, well, Thug is probably the best example of that. So the idea of me getting up with them, because that's what they knew me for. They didn't need that Thug guy stomping all over them, all over their beautiful music. And I agreed with them. I didn't want them to change one tiny bit, because I love them. They did a lot of Ventures and Shadows, that sort of surf music, but also Booker T and the MGs and the Meters and things like that.
Yeah.
And also Lee Perry and the Upsetters, that sort of, they had this versatility but I loved them just the way they were, and I didn't want to spoil it.
Right.
But hanging around with them for so long, I inevitably, they actually drew me back into real music.
Okay.
That's a terrible thing to say, real music, but music with,
more mainstream?
Not mainstream, but more recognizable structures
right.
in traditional. It begins here and it ends here, and certain things, songs with arrangements and those sorts of, because it was, Thug was kind of pretty freeform and experimental, I guess. But I started to hear words, where they're strong. Well, like Danny will have a strong melody line for an instrumental. Like, for instance, there was a song they had called King Tide, and the guitar went down, down, down. I heard down below.
Right.
Into and down below. So I started basically hearing the words that already seemed to be existing in the guitar melodies.
Yeah.
And also when I told the guys about it, and so like when we started to I got up for a couple of songs here and there. It was very gradual at first, like 2 or 3.
Just at a pub in Sydney?
Yeah, all over the place. Well, I think actually the first time I sung with them was on a harbour cruise.
Oh, okay.
Those you could hire a ferry,
sure,
and do little gigs, or have parties.
Yeah.
It was on one of them. But
did it feel good immediately? Did it feel good?
No, no, but no. It took work to really. No, I mean, it probably was, but I wanted the lyrics not to take it to anywhere or it already wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to put a new narrative. The lyrics that I used were as broad and simple and not personal. I didn't want to sort of, make that sound. Suddenly I've got this to say.
Right.
That's why I was sort of like down below, it's already saying that.
Sure.
So I wanted to, if this makes sense, I wanted the lyrics to be instrumental.
Okay.
And so, that was the first bunch of songs we wrote. But then I think we kind of anticipated each other's work, and Danny's tunes sort of almost anticipated my part in them.
And it worked. It worked very successfully.
Yes, it worked, and it kept evolving too.
Yeah.
And,
but you're one of the few bands, I think, that's made a record to try and, I guess, move away from some of the success which you had. When you did Three-Legged Dog in 1995, I think the idea behind it was to, let's actually lose a little bit of popularity.
Well, that's right. We wanted, that was part of what I was trying to say. We wanted to be, every band wants to be heard, and you want a bigger crowd than the last time you played there. You want that trajectory for your career, and ultimately it goes, whoa, shit. Suddenly we're on fucking Hey It's Saturday.
Yeah.
we're one of those bands.
How would you, for someone who's not in Australia,
it was uncomfortable.
How would you describe that show for someone who's not in Australia and doesn't know it?
Well,
it's like a variety show, I guess.
Yeah, it was a long running variety show, very mainstream, wacky, but very, very, very mainstream.
Yeah. And
we're finding ourselves on, accepted in those, realms of, where suddenly we're accepted. We're the most lauded band in the country, and we immediately shrunk away from the realization of, and also the expectations of that. None of us handled it very well.
Yeah. But that's not that surprising given where you came from. You talk about Thug, that sort of late 80s, and Beasts of Bourbon, of course, as well. Bands that are, I don't even know how, Thug, very experimental, the Beasts, just primal in some ways. You've come from this scene, so it makes sense that it was a difficult adjustment.
But yeah, you're right. Actually, The Honeymoon Is Over, that that album also concluded this period of working with Danny's music. See, a lot of early Cruel Sea, the first three albums, were mostly done from Danny Rumour's. They were derived from Danny Rumour's 4-track recordings,
Mm-hmm.
and those were what I could listen to and start structuring into songs. And we had by the honeymoon is over that we had exhausted that original gold mine,
Right.
and so we reached the sort of the peak of success. Okay, now it's time. You got to write another album, and the bucket was empty. The bucket was empty, so that was when we had to start from scratch. So I think we subconsciously, I look back at it and I see clearly that we wanted to do a rougher, less polished, less mainstream record, still being, bringing what was good about the band, but deliberately sort of making it rougher and not the very bright and sort of, straightforward and radio kind of friendly thing that we'd done. It wasn't quite career suicide, but it was. We definitely wanted to sort of lose. I mean, you could lose half the audience, and we were still doing pretty all right. So any band would be happy with. If you're selling 500,000, you're losing half of them. What does it matter?
But there's people around you who are invested in you keeping that 500,000.
I know that was we were real pains in the ass to our record company. Like they'd want to we want to do an ad campaign and we want to do that. It's going to be on, and we're going, whoa, ease up now. We were always sort of pulling on the reins.
Yeah.
And they're always going, let's go, no, let's get it higher while it's up there. And where were we?
We were just going with wherever we went. But I mean, so we've jumped quite a long way ahead into your career, which is great. But just to give it some context in terms of where you started performing, which is in Brisbane, is that correct? So you had Corpse of Christ. Was that the first band
about that
you did one gig with?
Yes. Oh, that's.
And then into Tex Deadly and the Dum Dums.
Yes.
Were you a natural born performer? Was this where you were heading?
Apparently so.
Okay.
I was in a band called the Corpse of Christ.
Corpse of Christ.
For one gig. Me and this girl that I used to catch the train into, she was sort of punky looking girl, and inevitably we were going to the same shows. We weren't boyfriend and girlfriend or anything, but we were kind of inevitably on the same train all the time. So we spoke and hang out sometimes. But anyway, we both joined these two other guys who already had the name of the band, Corpse of Christ, and they were.
That's brutal.
And they were into a lot of things that I wasn't really aware of at that point. Like things like Throbbing Gristle and all this electronic and industrial, really sort of dark, fucked up stuff. But we did one gig, and it just was such a shambles, even to their level, even to their low standards.
Define shambles. What happened?
Me and Michelle were asked, there was a band meeting a couple of days later, and these two guys decided, we decided we're going to go it alone. Okay? So we were let go. I was on guitar, by the way.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yes. But anyway, not long after that, I was 17. And I was venturing out into the night of Brisbane. There was this place called the Communist Hall. It's actually, I think, where Triple Z Studios are now.
Okay.
It's at the top of Fortitude Valley. But anyway, somebody gave me a drug. It was a sleeping pill of some kind. It was a Seropax.
Okay.
And take a sleeping pill and go out. What the fuck? And mix it with alcohol and put yourself in this public situation. Anyway, I made the most blaringly obvious arsehole of myself just knocking things over, just conspicuous in the worst possible way. Fell downstairs.
Right.
I was yelling stuff at the band, like encouraging stuff.
Okay.
But it wasn't welcome.
Right. And you're oblivious to it.
Yeah, I'm oblivious how obnoxious I am, and I fall downstairs. I kicked some guy's leg as he walked past. I fell down the stairs, and then I was lying on the concrete. No one would come near me, like even to see if I was okay, because I think it was more like, I don't think he's going to move anymore. He's like, I think they were all hoping that I was quite badly hurt. It was really a long staircase, by the way.
Yeah,
we're talking like 10 meters sort of thing. And anyway, all that happened, and a few weeks later, I was at the one late night club that the alternative scene had in Brisbane, and I was there, and I got approached by these two kind of nerdy looking guys, and they said, "You were the guy at the Communist Hall, at the pork gig at the Communist Hall, weren't you?" And I sheepishly, yeah, that was me. "Would you like to be in a band with us?" I'm paraphrasing, of course, but
Sure.
but pretty much that's how it was. And I think they were at the Corpse of Christ gig too.
All right.
So they'd been keeping an eye. So
You were headhunted.
They'd seen my potential. They'd seen my potential to create a scene, and my willingness to be on stage.
Yeah.
Even though guitar wasn't my. They didn't want me for guitar. Yeah.
They wanted your attitude.
Well, yeah, but I never actually acted like that again. I was quite reserved and almost, of course, I was nervous first time I actually got on stage in front of them. But that was the Wadley brothers. That was Ian and Greg Wadley.
Okay.
Yes.
And they're the ones that gave you the name, Tex Deadly, is that right?
Well, we used to make up punk rock nom de plumes.
Yeah, yeah.
We made up this imaginary character called Grit Savage, and we did this graffiti campaign across Brisbane, like
Right.
Grit Savage, here, and weird stuff like pumpkins, potatoes, peas, and cabbage. Everybody loves Grit Savage. And we wrote it in huge, this, graffiti, spray paint graffiti across the wall of this cinema. And anyway, it was, Tex Deadly was just another one of these, funny,
right.
that's a good one, but in the tradition of Grit Savage. But Greg Wadley, who was kind of a bit of older of us and kind of in charge, he got the gigs.
Okay.
I think he saw himself as a bit of a, Malcolm McLaren, Svengali type sort of,
Okay.
like, hey, that's not a bad one. And we were already called the Dum Dums, and I think he liked the alliteration of Tex Deadly and the Dum Dums.
Right.
But anyway, he didn't really even ask me. He just, next time that we were advertised on a poster, it was Tex Deadly and the Dum Dums. And I guess I'm Tex Deadly. Another little trivia fact about that band, there were 3 Gregs. It was myself, Greg Perkins, Greg Wadley, and Greg Gilbert. And then there was Ian Wadley. And we really should have been called Ian and the Gregs. But it made sense. It made practical sense to have one less Greg. So yes, that's when I became Tex Deadly.
Was it Brisbane at that time? So we're talking
81, 82.
Okay. Being a punk in Brisbane at that point, or being in a band like Tex Deadly, I can't imagine it was a particularly welcoming environment. Or you must have been outsiders.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't even welcome within our own scene. There was only like 50 people in the entire scene, but, there was like there was still sort of jealousy and bitchery and
Right.
and sort of but no, like any alternative look was, like you couldn't get away with anything in the late 70s, early 80s in Brisbane. Like if you didn't have a mullet, you were conspicuous.
Really?
Or like if you didn't have flares or Bogarts, or the what shitty sort of clothes people were wearing in 1981.
Yeah.
Like all I had to do was wear gym boots, like stovepipe jeans and a T-shirt with a band name on it and short hair, not a mohawk or anything like that. And you were a fucking target. You were like, fuck you, punk. Like people yelling at you from cars.
Really?
Oh yeah, and spitting at you, throwing shit at you. It's
Really?
and also just absolute sort of anytime interaction with the police all the time. Like where are you going? What are you doing? What's your what's your name? Where you going? All it was so common. It was almost mundane.
Really?
It was. It was not welcome. Music was any culture at all was seemed to be unwelcome in Brisbane.
Yeah.
Oh, you like paintings, do you? That's a bit weird. But yeah, I had a vocational officer assess me in grade 11, and the only things I was good at were English and art.
Yeah.
And how they interpret that is, oh, you should be a sign writer.
A sign writer?
Yes.
That was the only career possibility.
Yes. Well, it's got words in it, and it's got paint in it. So,
did you take them up? Is that where you went?
Well, they actually asked me to leave. They
Well,
for some reason at 15, I went to a very harsh Catholic school, Catholic boys' school, and for some reason when I turned 15, I just sort of realised, this is really fucked up.
Yeah, because they would punish you severely, right?
Also, that there was free-form violence from the lay teachers who would sort of slap you, grab you by the ears, just grab you by the throat, just stuff that people would be in jail for.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
Then there was the ritual violence of, so be in my office and you'll get 6 of the best.
And did you?
Oh yes, of course. I won't go into all the other sort of dodgy stuff that went on, but 15 for some reason I just woke up and thought, what? This is wrong. And and they said when I was expected to put out my hand for them to beat it, I just said no. No, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't seem the logical step for me to take. I don't agree with your assessment that me yawning requires me to be beaten.
Wow. Did that dumbfound them?
Shit like that. Yeah, exactly. They had no. If they would have, I would have been much easier to handle if I was going, "Fuck you, man! Fuck you! I'm not going to fuck you!" and throwing things about. They know how to handle that,
right?
But quiet sort of. No, I'm not going, not taking part in this anymore. For some reason, I just hit them with pure, simple logic. And that was it. I had to go, and they were. The art teacher told me the entire staff's having meetings about you. They don't understand what's happened. You've changed into this other person. They don't understand. They don't know what to do about you. And so anyway, I was offered the chance to leave and go to a. There was this scheme that was going on. It was a pre-apprenticeship tech course. Apprentices have to go away to tech school each year, once a year, and their employee has to pay for that. Well, this scheme got you to tech school and did all that before and made you more employable because the employer didn't have to do it. Anyway, I went off and did the sign writing pre-apprenticeship course, and quickly realised, being good at art and English had nothing to do with signwriting, and they realised it too. But basically, it's all about being really neat,
Sure,
and knowing how to be really neat and straight with you. And I was none of those things, but I saw it through. That kind of coincided with me going out and seeing bands, and then inevitably being in one.
We have to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere because we'll be back shortly with more from Tex Perkins. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Tex Perkins. How old are you when you moved to Sydney? 18?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. With
it was 17, 18. We started going down when I was 17, but I think I fully moved down when I was 18.
With a plan to do anything in particular, or like what was on your radar?
We were just given this is how fortunate I am. The very first gig we did, the Dum Dums did, was somehow we got a support spot, the opening spot for a band from Sydney, a ska band called the All Nighters.
Oh, right.
And somehow Greg Wadley snagged the opening spot. I think there was an opening band, a middle one, and then the main line of the All Nighters. Anyway, we were on the bill, and we opened, and my favourite band at the time was the Cramps.
Okay. So
we were kind of like a really puny, and the Stooges was two of the covers that we did. I think we did Dirt by the Stooges, and I think we did Fever, not an original Cramps song, but we did it in the style, that sort of Cramps style. But anyway, that was our thing. We were kind of like a shitty sort of puny teenage version of the Cramps. But anyway, I was standing at the bar afterwards, watching the All Nighters, and this guy came up to me. And to cut a long story short, he was the manager of the band, and his name was Roger Grierson. He was the manager of the All Nighters.
Oh, the All Nighters, gotcha. Yep.
And he basically said, "You guys are great. I'll get you some gigs if you want to come down to Sydney. Here's my number."
Yeah.
And called the number. Gigs got arranged. We went down on this. We all jumped into a van. Did a bunch of dates in Sydney. Had a great time. Drove back, and then I think we did 2 of those tours, and then pretty much on the third one, we stayed. Ian didn't come. Ian couldn't come because he was still at school.
Oh, right. But now you've only got 3 Gregs. That gets super
it was
more
only
confusing.
2. Yeah. But the lineup started to change.
Okay.
Various other people came into the band, but where what was the
so
question?
that was I was just wondering about moving to Sydney. You just mentioned you'd come down with
it was magnificent. It was seriously moving from Brisbane, 1981, going to Sydney, coming to Sydney. It was like being in New York.
Really?
It was like, this fucking place is cool. This is nobody's yelling at me. Nobody gives a shit what I'm wearing, and there were cool people. There were bands everywhere. There was like the area from King's Cross, Darlinghurst, Surrey Hills, Redfern, and Woolloomooloo, Paddington. They all had gigs, and they were all all good gigs, like great sort of venues, and it was happening all the time. It was fucking alive.
Yeah.
And it was I think it was probably the best time I've ever. I mean, I know I look at this period incredibly nostalgically, and I still remember the absolute shock and awe of being in a place that wasn't constantly trying to fucking step on you and But it really was a great scene. So many great bands, a lot of activity, and also I met so many people that accepted me as well. It was the first time I'd ever see, like, moving from Brisbane. Back in Brisbane, I was still that weird kid. I moved to Sydney, and I'm people just they don't know my awkward beginnings, so they accepted me as a singer in this cool band, and and I'm
You've got a fresh start.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm hanging with literally, like I meet the scientists, Kim Salmon and Boris Sudovic of the Scientists, who literally were my favourite band.
Yeah.
Apart from the Cramps, the scientists were, kind of what my ultimate vision for the Dum Dums would have been if I had the right musicians. They were the Stooges mixed with the Cramps.
Yeah.
There was this swamp thing, but with this primal sort of, I don't know. And anyway, I'm hanging with these people, and they're my friends. And I'm meeting, James Baker of the Hoodoo Gurus and Brad Shepard, and they're all hanging out and meeting the Johnnies. They're just starting up. And I love seeing the Johnnies, and there's just so many, a lot of other really great people, but I guess they're the most significant ones that were quickly became really close friends and really important to me.
Yeah, and bandmates in some regards.
Indeed,
with the Beasts of Bourbon.
Indeed, that's ultimately the friendships that were when the Dum Dums folded, and I had gigs to fulfill. My friends came to and said, "Oh, we'll play with you."
Yeah. And that's the birth of the Beast of Bourbon?
That's the birth. That's the burst of the Beebs of...
We know. I got it.
That's the birth of the Beast of Bourbon. Gotcha. I did it, see?
So you're, again, I think 18 around this time.
Mm-hmm.
The Beasts were a serious band, serious players, serious individuals.
Mm.
Were you prepared for that kind of intensity?
Well, it was fun.
Mm.
I remember not taking it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking, especially when we got to the studio and we were recording the Axeman's Jazz, which was booked as a session on a Sunday afternoon from 12 to 6 p.m. I remember thinking then, while we were recording it, this is pretty fucking good. like I'm literally with two of the members of this band in my favorite band in the world. Probably my best friend at the time, Spencer Jones, is in there. Also, James Baker, who was like a father figure to me. Really, he and his partner at the time would feed me. Mm-hmm. Literally, like I'd have a nice home cooked meal every now and then at the Bakers. So like these were important people to me. And I was making I was in a studio with them making a fucking record.
Yeah,
and I remember, thinking, I don't know, I recognized it for what it was.
Okay.
And I think and appreciated it. If I can get philosophical just on you, just lay some philosophical shit on you right now. I think that's the key to a successful life for anybody. Just being able to appreciate recognize those moments where, hey, this is good.
Right.
What we got here, even if it's a lunch with your family or something, just where everything's beautiful, just appreciate it, just recognize it, honor it.
Yeah.
And, I remember actually doing that.
Well, I think you've said that day when you were in the studio is one of the best days of your life.
Yeah, well, indeed.
Because was the album recorded in that 6-hour block?
Yeah, there was.
The whole album?
It was mixed live to tape.
Okay. Wow.
Also, it wasn't a 6-hour session. It was more a 4-hour session because we were all paid. Roger Grierson gave us all $100 at the beginning of the session as a sort of a per diem kind of thing. I don't know. I'm not sure why. But anyway, the producer, Tony Cohen, disappeared for 2 hours with $100 so that he got, because we were very near King's Cross. And and he came back couple of hours later, ready to go.
That's incredible. 4 hours to do that record. Wow.
Oh, we could have done it in less. I mean, it's 40 minutes long.
Sure.
That's all we really needed. A lot of it is, I think we would have, I'd say 80% of it is first take.
Okay. Wow.
I mean, we had rehearsed, not over-rehearsed, because actually a lot of those songs were freshly written. Mm-hmm. We hadn't, when we were playing live, it was more sort of leftovers from the Dum Dum set and just a bunch of covers that we loved. Mm. You know, like everything from New York Dolls to Creedence Clearwater, you know, the Stones and, you know, Stooges, you know, Standells, you know, Kinks, you know, just Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
But, yeah, actually, I think that's what, when Roger Grierson, again, he was still in the picture, but he paid for the session. Yeah, I think he expected us to do a live set, you know, like play a bunch of covers.
Okay.
So coming in with, you know, 90% original material, you know, was surprising to him.
Was that unusual back then in the pub scene?
No. But what we've been doing, you know, when we throw together these quick gigs, was a bunch of covers and, you know, shit that we kind of knew.
Yeah.
But when sort of somebody said, well, I think you should go and record in the studio instead of just doing a bunch of covers. You know, me and Spencer started writing things, and you know, Kim had an old scientist song that hadn't been used called "Dropout," and so yeah, it was 80% of it was original material that was a little bit improvised in the studio, but we had rehearsed.
Okay. The Beasts gigs were famously could be quite aggressive.
Well, that was a bit later.
Sure. That was round low 91.
91 was probably when we took it up a gear. Yeah, that was a different lineup of the Beasts. Boris and James, who were in the original on the first 3 albums, left to concentrate on their band, the Dubrovniks, and we got in Tony and Brian. Tony Polo and Brian Hooper, who were already playing with Kim in a band called the Surrealists. So we already knew them socially. We did audition other people, but Tony and Brian just fit in just too easily to ignore. And yeah, we already knew them, so they fit in easily. But even though actually the first tour we did of Europe with them, we were playing the material that we recorded with James and Boris. When we went out on tour to play that stuff, we could realise that sort of, although they played that stuff quite well, we'd kind of become a different band, and we needed new stuff. We needed new songs that were more representative of the type of band that we'd become, because with Tony and Brian, we were much more aggressive and hard hitting, and we didn't have enough of those songs, so we pretty quickly sort of realized we need to write and record as soon as possible. So that was the Low Road album, and that was and that coincided with the whole grunge thing, and so like that when that came out, hard hitting aggressive rock and roll bands were doing all right.
Yeah.
we lucked out in our timing there. But I saw something on YouTube of the Beasts at the Phoenician Club. It was a properly filmed thing that we released, way back. But it's just full of that 91 like guys in t-shirts jumping on stage and stage diving, back flipping and shit, and all that really, full on crowd, participation, was going on. And so, I guess we were already that kind of band, but, that being in that atmosphere of that time, it was kind of expected, go hard, fucking
right,
go hard, let's fuck shit up, and let's scare some people.
Well, because
let's scare ourselves,
Well, because you could be quite combative at times.
Well, indeed, with each other, and with ourselves, with the audience, indeed. I mean, Oh, yeah, absolutely. I always expect the audience to turn on me, even now.
And you egged that on back then? Because you'd ask people to throw bottles at you on occasion, wouldn't you?
Well, there was one famous occasion.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, it was not sure. Well, it's a little bit my origin story. It's a little bit like my my communist hall story
Sure.
of earlier. There was a gig that the Beast were headlining, and there was two supports, the Black Eyed Susans and Roland S. Howard opened for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a bit, I was a bit drunk. We'd been to a Japanese restaurant, and the sake was lovely. Anyway, I came back to the gig all fired up, and people were talking through Roland's set, and which really kind of upset me, and which really sort of made me view the audience with contempt. I think, fuck you, fucking people. You know who this guy is. You know what? And anyway, by the time I got on stage, I had a little bit of that sort of, you're a kind of an audience, And anyway, I'm not sure how it began, or what I might have said. I didn't, but it was kind of a wild atmosphere anyway, but things were being thrown up on stage. And then a bass player, Brian Hooper, stepped forward to the mic and said, "Stop fucking throwing shit, on stage, And then I said, "Yeah, stop throwing shit at him. Throw him at me." And, 3, 2, 1, dong! A perfectly lobbed, bottle of Crown Lager comes from, 40 meters away and hits me fair between the eyes. And, wow, it was a thing of sheer ironic beauty. It was.
Did it knock you out?
Momentarily, I think, for not enough for me to lose my footing. I think I blacked out for maybe a second,
Right.
but then it was like, and then I was up again, and then blood started pouring down my face, and I like a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So I'm tasting. I've got a mouthful of blood that is coming from my head. So then so I think I said, "Yeah, you win." But then I defiantly sort of got into the music, and up until then I think it was we were all a bit too pissed that night, and we weren't as focused and hard hitting as we probably were on other occasions. We're probably still pretty up there, but after that I think I remember sort of, okay, here we fucking go. And my blood is just pouring down now. Now it's all down the front of my shirt.
Yeah.
So I'm just this scene, and then I got through another couple of songs, and then for some reason I just flipped, and then just started finding everything I could on stage to throw at the audience.
Oh, man.
Like there was, I don't know, there's a few milk crates and a few things like that I was throwing into the audience, and then I started to pick up the monitors. I think the mic stand had already gone in. Anyway, classic old school rock and roll style. The security come on, and start restraining me.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, this place has curtains. If you can imagine, the curtains are slowly, and a hail of bottles and cans is still, because I've started a new, sort of war with my throwing. They're throwing shit back. So but the curtains are slowly closing, and where they can get through, the target is getting smaller and smaller. And I remember thinking it really funny how sort of like a few were still getting through the ever decreasing gap in the curtains until it finally closed, and I was taken off to hospital. It was only a few stitches, but
Right.
But head wounds they bleed a lot, especially when your body temperature's up. And,
Sure.
it was probably the cut was probably only it wasn't deep, or or it needed 3 stitches, but
Right.
yeah, it was just big enough to really just gush. Quite theatrical, I have to say.
So it makes perfect sense when you were talking earlier about when the Cruel Sea found fame, because that ARIA success is only a couple of years after events like
No,
that.
well, that event was after that.
Oh, that was after the.
That was years later. That was in '97.
Oh, okay.
But even though, I mean, we had wild gigs before, but no, that was the. I think by '97 we deliberately, we were trying to be as bad, and like we want, if you're going to be in a rock band, in that type of rock band, you got to be as bad as as you can be.
Yeah.
In all sorts of ways, and I think the intensity. I think that night sort of it ticked a box for me.
Okay.
Like, okay, well, I've done that now. Like, I think there's no need to take this any further. I've achieved. I can, apart from like getting my head cut off on stage, because that's as far as I want to go. I won't be losing a limb, for rock and roll. All right.
With the years since then, and I guess from the mid-90s on, you have pursued so many different musical outlets. Tex, Don and Charlie, and your solo work, and there was the Ladyboys and TNT and
Dark Horses.
Exactly.
A few others.
Yeah, and now with the Fat Rubber Band, have you always had that restlessness in terms of, or just that desire to always be up for anything if it means something to you?
It's both. It's that recognizing the opportunities when they present themselves and going,
right,
go give it a go.
Yeah,
because I do feel really, really fortunate in general, because a lot of things, like people that I've worked with, it's sheer good fortune that I've that I've met these people and these things have happened. So and it's become it is due to the fact that my willingness to. I don't say yes to everything. I mean, but a lot of the opportunities that have fallen into my lap have been great ones, and I've gone, fuck yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
And looking back on my whole career experience, like the worst parts were the most apparently successful parts. Like not sad, but like you when success traps you in that success for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you've got a hit album, you've got to play that thing for the next 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to play it a lot.
Right.
You're going to have a lot of big successful gigs, and you're going to do a lot of them. And you're going to play the same fucking thing. And we're not interested in new material. Okay, stick your fucking new material up your ass. Like play the fucking album.
Yeah.
And so that becomes After a couple of years, you I don't know. I'm particularly, I'm undisciplined in that way. I'm ready to move on. Okay, we've done this. I think I think it's important to keep moving.
Sure.
But a restlessness, and also it's more interesting. I mean, being stuck in one band. I mean, I don't know how I would have handled. If the Cruel Sea had continued to be successful,
right?
And at the top of the game, no matter what we did, despite our best efforts, we'd been like, oh shit, we even love that, and I'm stuck there. I don't know. I can't imagine being in the industry or being in the game
mm-hmm.
for 38 years or whatever it is now. If I hadn't done all these different things, being in one band, people don't.
Right.
Bands, they have their finite period usually.
Sure.
And go, okay, see you go. But I've always, to the frustration of many other people that I'm involved with, always had 2 or 3 things going on simultaneously.
Yeah. Is there a common link to them all? Is it just a spirit or something to each of these projects? Because they're quite different. Like, is there just a spirit to them that they have in common, if not a sonic?
Yeah. Well, let's try and just look at 3 acts that were operating at the same time.
Okay.
Cruel Sea, Beast of Bourbon, and Tex and Charlie all released and toured during 1993, and 1993 was when the Cruel Sea was going big. I was still playing with the Beasts, and we released the Tex and Charlie album. Yeah, and they're all quite different in their styles. Like the Cruel Sea is kind of like it's a party groove kind of, good time kind of feel. So Beast is very intense, and and Tex and Charlie is like the hangover, the regretful, mournful sort of looking back on, oh fucking hell, look at all that shit that I did. So they do have a kind of a relationship, I guess, that one's the party, one's the hangover. So but I don't know.
Maybe there's not that much thought. It's just if something appeals, you just
it is. I mean, and there's a lot of different styles. Like I make a lot of music on my own that's not even supposed to be for people to hear. It's kind of drone meditative kind of things that I get on, make loops of, and play guitar with an what an EBO is.
Yeah.
And to make these long sort of droning, I especially did over the last couple of years. It was therapeutic, really. Just getting lost in the making of music, and being free of the idea that you're going to present it. And it's not, and a lot of it's not even music. It's just kind of sound, and but even that sound has some kind of emotion. So yeah, I don't know. I'm into a lot of things, but the perception of me is very limited. I think a lot of people. A lot of people just still come up to me and say, "Oh, Cruel Sea, saw you support the Stones in '95." Like that's.
And what do you say? How do you respond?
Good on you. Good memory.
So where does the Fat Rubber Band fit into all of this?
Well, Fat Rubber Band's another collaboration that I'm really lucky to have had. It's with a fellow called Matt Walker, and I've known Matt for 25 years. He and his duo partner Ash Davies used to support the Cruel Sea in the 90s, and he's just I guess he's a kind of modern blues player, but not trapped in the trad, thinking of the blues. It's more sort of, he's just such a great player, great slide player. He played in those days. He used to play a lot of lap steel, but really make it rock, so he's very versatile. And I've known him for a long time, and we'd been working together in another thing called The Man in Black, which is this Johnny Cash theatre, tribute show that we were both in. And so we'd been working together, but we hadn't done anything original. We hadn't written any songs together. But we talk a lot about music, and we share a lot of the same tastes, and we talk about all sorts of music, everything. We used to talk a lot about Link Ray.
Right.
There's a really interesting Link Ray. For anyone that doesn't know, started in the 1950s, and it was a guitar instrumental music, rather sort of rough and ready kind of, more rough and ready Dwayne Eddy, I guess, and also significantly invented distorted guitar by putting a knife in the cone of his amplifier so that it rattled.
Yeah,
which is so fucking significant. Also, he's a Native American, and which wasn't really made a thing of, but he did all this instrumental music, but then in 1971 he released an album just called Link Ray, and it's got him on the cover looking very much like a Native American Indian. just with a headband, and it's a side profile. I'm not talking about full
Sure.
feather headdress, but it's a significant image, but also it was significant because it was a vocal album, and he's been primarily instrumental up until that point, and it's this most fascinating to us, or apart from it being filled with great songs, it's just it's got a country funk blues swamp thing. It was recorded in his brother's Vernon's chicken shack on his farm. There's 2 records, that one and Beans and Fatback, and they were both recorded there in the 3-track shack. And there's still a lot of I don't know, for some reason that has fascinated us, and we've exchanged little snippets of information about that, and it's almost sort of mythical to us.
Sure.
And anyway, the second album, Beans and Fatback, it's quite rare. My partner Christina found a copy and bought it for me, and I was quite excited. And then I took a picture of it and sent it to Matt, and I said, "Look what I've got." And his reply came back, "Awesome, let's make an album like that."
Yep.
Which was the invitation I've been waiting 25 years for. I'd always revered Matt. It's like almost, he's a singer-songwriter, great guitar player, great singer. So he's not in need of a collaborator because he's got it all. So so to be invited, I could, oh fuck yeah, all right. When do we start? And I guess he was in the position to make that invitation because he had a home studio himself. He had in the back shed. Yeah. Not as rudimentary and it's not quite a chicken, a bit more purpose built than a chicken shack. But yeah, he had his home studio in his back shed. So we started demoing and at his place, and then we started working as a duo, and that's kind of my bread and butter gigs these days, as I go out and play all sorts of places with Matt as a duo. And Matt can go pretty much anywhere in my back catalogue and play it convincingly. He's one of the few people. He's the only person that can go, that I've played with, that can go everywhere in my back catalogue. In the past, I've had worked with kind of specialists, who were sort of good in a particular area, and so that dictated what we would play. But Matt and I can go anywhere, and we wrote an album worth of material and released it a few months back. It's called Tex Perkins and the Fat Rubber Band, and it took us 4 fucking years to get it out.
Did it really?
Well, pretty well from the point of inception from that point of let's make an album.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a pandemic fucking happened in the middle of it. So yeah, we finished mixing in 2020, January 2020.
Wow.
And all rubbing our hands. Okay, here we go. And then, maybe we'll wait for a little while. So we were literally, while we fucking watched shit unfold, we kind of, we would first of all, we're waiting. But we almost just forgot about that it existed.
Right.
Because it really looked out for a while like, your industry's over, man.
Yeah.
This isn't happening anymore. But then I got to give a lot of credit to my very good friend Vera Rizzo.
Right.
She helps me out. She's my personal assistant, organizer. She hadn't heard the album, and I gave it to her, and she said, "This is fucking great." And anyway, she was really enthusiastic about it, and because we hadn't started shopping it around or anything, that was the next step. But a year went by, and we didn't even think of it again because of what was going on. But then she got this fella called Rob Scott at Source Music to hear it, and he loved it, and that's really all I need. That's what I think that's what you need these days. Just enthusiasm, people that give a shit, so you don't have to do all the pushing.
Yeah.
You're not out there. I don't push very hard. Here's the record. If you want to listen to it, good. If you don't, I'll be over there doing something else.
The record's got this real. I don't know if you'll hear this, but I hear this really kind of noir sort of mood to a lot of the record.
That's because it's got a black and white cover.
I know. Maybe I've been coloured by that. But there's the closing song Out There, which has got this chorus of frogs. And sounds like it was recorded in the swamp, and then at various points it's got you whispering the line "Come with us," which sounds kind of scary. That song. What is that song about?
Well, it's about I live rurally. I live kind of out of the way. We live in a fairly remote valley in northern New South Wales, and we live on the fringes. We don't have sort of there's no garbage trucks. There's no. Well, we get a mail. There's a mailman. That's one connection to the civilizations that we have. But everything else, we're sort of, we've got power. but we're kind of out of the way. And I guess that song and sometimes when people, there's other people. I've got a lovely family that I've raised up there, but there's a lot of other people that are sort of out there kind of hiding. And that isolation kind of thing feeds upon itself. And, there's a certain, I want to be by myself. I'm getting out of the city. There's a certain paranoia that I observe. And I just kind of explored that idea of living, out on the fringes. And you're looking back at little shit. I don't want to go into the city.
Yeah.
And hey, fucking prophetically, look at the attitude towards rural and city. A lot of people. I mean, I wrote that. Say 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. But
it literally came, to be. The city was like, fuck, I'm glad I'm out of there. I'm glad I'm out here, on the fringes in the country. But I guess the whole tone of it is more of a paranoid sort of thing of I've been out here too long.
Right.
It's got a little bit of the Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now in it.
Tex, there's so much more I could ask you, but I'll leave it with one final question, and that is that Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit's due. Are there people you'd give credit to for helping you get where you are? And you just mentioned Vera and Rob. Are there other people as well?
Well, Roger Grierson for giving the Wadleys. The Wadleys for approaching me in the first place. Even the guys from the Corpse of Christ.
Right.
Everybody I mentioned in this entire interview, I give credit for. I just feel so fortunate to still be here, still having, still, as I say, I really didn't think I would be here. I thought 7 months ago, there seemed to be no end to it.
Mm.
And I went to a pretty dark place, but somehow I crawled back mentally. But no, every single person that I have mentioned, I am so grateful to, and I'm grateful to you for giving me this opportunity to vent, especially some of that early stuff that was quite current. Quite.
Give credit to Ernie for digging up the area.
Yes, indeed. It's to Ernie. To bin rummaging Ernie.
Thanks so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, mate.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Tex for his time, and thank you for listening. Just a reminder that Tex Perkins and the Fat Rubber Band's self-titled record is out now. If you have any feedback on the show or suggestions on who you'd like me to interview, or even if you just want to say hello, please drop me a line at humansofmusic@jaxsta.com. That's humansofmusic, one word, at Jaxsta, JAXSTA.com. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to Jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.